Hello, and welcome to A Week in Watches, episode 54. My name is Blake Bettner. I'll be your host this week. This is our weekly look back at all the people's watches and stories from the industry. Before we get into this week's episode, a couple of notes. First off, go visit the Wind Up Watch Shop for all your watch and watch accessory needs. We'll have more details on that midway through. And second, we've had a few requests to do a wrist check before we get into these. So, for the first time, we'll be doing a wrist check on the Week in Watches. I'm wearing a Porsche Design Chronograph 1. The GP Ice Race Edition. Got a lot more details on this watch. On Worn and Wound, we'll put a link to that down below. So that's what I'm wearing this week. If you have any other questions about this stuff, feel free to leave them in the comments below. We'll read them all. And we'll get to our favorite comment on last week's video at the end, so stay tuned. We're jumping in this week with a watch from Rolex. You may have heard of them. Last week was the 100th running of the Le Mans, the 24-hour race of Le Mans. Rolex took advantage of this by releasing a special Daytona that brings back the exotic dial, aka the Paul Newman dial. Of course, Paul Newman himself, the man, the actor, raced in Le Mans in 1979. Actually came in second in that race. Side note, another person from the watch world came in third, right behind him, Laurent Ferrier, who has his own brand these days, but of course spent many decades at Patek Philippe. Side note, that's not the only famous person that ran in the 1979 Le Mans. Pink Floyd drummer Nick Mason was also in this race. That's all the stuff on Le Mans. Let's get back to the Daytona. This is a new Daytona from Rolex that takes advantage of the new frame that was introduced just earlier this year. This is a reference 126529. LN. That last bit is important because this is a full white gold watch with a white gold bracelet that is utilizing a black Cerachrome ceramic bezel. This is a combination that has not happened before. Of course, the platinum version gets kind of a brown ceramic bezel, but this one gets a black bezel. It gets a black dial, and it gets pure white subdials. As I mentioned, this brings back some of those exotic dial details from the 4-digit reference Daytonas that we last saw in the mid-80s. This brings the squared off marks to the indexes and the subdials, as well as the entirely horizontally positioned numerals within those subdials. Very clean looking watch. This is kind of the best spec, the greatest hits spec of the Daytona that you could ask for. As I mentioned, it is in white gold, and it is just over $51,000. So I doubt we'll be seeing many of these out and about. We'd love to see this kind of a thing come into the steel references, but I'm just glad to see Rolex paying attention to their history in such a way. Now, as I mentioned, this is honoring the 100th anniversary of the 24 Hours of Le Mans race. So there's a couple of details that call that out on the watch. First and foremost is the red 100 on the tachymeter. It receives a red infill on it. Second is a little more subtle and a little more creative. The hour totalizer goes up to 24 hours. So this means there's actually a revised caliber inside, the 4132. I believe they had to add nearly 10 new components to the movement, which is no easy feat when it's already in a relatively slim case. This will allow your hour timing to go all the way up to 24 hours. Again, a nod to the 24-hour race of Le Mans. That is the new Rolex Daytona 100th anniversary model. This is not a limited edition model, it's a regular production model, so we'll see how many of these get out there. If past is anything to go by, I don't expect these to be easy watches to come by. All right, moving on to exciting news from Longines this week. They're giving us a GMT that a lot of us have been asking for. This is a new Zulu time within their Spirit collection, and it's housed in a 39mm case. That's right. This is kind of a shot across the bow of Tudor and their Black Bay Pro. It's a 39mm true GMT, which means it gets an independently adjustable hour hand. This is 39mm and 13.5mm thick. Again, undercutting the Tudor by just a little bit. This comes in quite a few colorways as well, including some gilt colorways that are a little more expensive, but black, blue, and green are all available here. They start at just over $3,000 on the strap and go up by $100 on the bracelet, which is a 3-link bracelet. Overall, these are really handsome watches. There's a lot of watch for the money. This uses silicone components in the escapement. It's a COSC certified, and again, a true GMT. So hats off to Longines for producing something like this. Of course, this isn't the first Zulu Time GMT that's been released. They did the 42mm version last year, which was a bit much on the wrist. So now there will be a couple of options there, much more consumer-friendly approach. So thank you to Longines. Next up, one of 2 new releases this week from Seiko. This is a new speed timer reference SFJ001005, 005. This is a design that references the old Sportura design, which is quite a polarizing design. This places 4 independent dials inside of the main dial. This is a 1/100th of a second chronograph, and it steps down in each of those dials. So when you start the chronograph, you will get your main seconds timer that kicks into action. You'll get a 1/10 of a second timer, and you'll get a 100th of a second timer, and then you'll get your hour and minute totalizer at the bottom. So it's kind of a cacophony of activity that starts when you start the chronograph here. There's a lot of other functions. It's got 3 pushers emanating from the sides and a crown down at 4 o'clock. There's a lot going on with this watch. It comes in a few different colorways, as I mentioned, including a limited edition SFJ001005. These start around $900, 42 millimeters thick. Overall, just a really cool, funky release from Seiko. We love to see them referencing this part of their history in such a fun, playful way. I would have liked to have seen that Sportura case make its comeback, but maybe that's just me. But they've done it justice within these new SFJ references in the Prospects collection. If you're a fan of that original Sportura, keep an eye out for another video that we have either live now or upcoming very soon that will feature Zach Weiss's own Sportura in all its glory. And before we go any further, here's some more details on the Wind Up Watch Shop. If you haven't visited the Wind Up Watch Shop lately, be sure to head over there. We've got all kinds of new exciting things there, from watches to watch accessories, straps, watch boxes. We've also got a lot of new gear items that are coming up over there, pocket knives and things of that nature. So do yourself a favor, head over to the Wind Up Watch Shop. We're constantly refreshing with new products, lots of new watches coming in there, really cool new Zodiac stuff. And of course, we've got the classic watch box that's even coming in new colors these days. So be sure to check that out over at the Wind Up Watch Shop. And before we get to our second Seiko release from this week, we thought we'd kick it over to a small independent brand over in Switzerland called MB&F, who released a new horological machine this week. This is a new HM8, a Mark II. This isn't the first time that they've done an additional variant to an existing horological machine. You recall they've done this with the HM3, which got a frog variant, and a mega wine variant, all very cool watches. The HM8 gets a new carbon macleron case that is very shapely, much more organic than the original HM8, when paired with the single piece of sapphire that's been shaped like it was born in a wind tunnel. It looks like it's right off the back of a supercar, like the Porsche 918, for instance. It's very sleek. Obviously, the inspiration here, just like it was with the original HM8, is racing cars. That one was called the Can-Am. So right off the bat, this carbon macleron material is very interesting for a few ways. It was developed for them. It's very strong, it's very light, all the things you'd expect, but it can accept a multitude of finishes and colors. This is coming in a white housing, they call them body panels, just like a car, and a British racing green limited edition variant will be built in 33 pieces. I would not be surprised to see this rendered in quite a few different colors and maybe finishes coming soon. This also uses a hook and loop strap system, which I love seeing in watches like this. It's not a cheap watch, it's $78,000, but I like the kind of high-low juxtaposition there. It's also very comfortable on the wrist. It rides very sleek, as you might imagine, given the racing inspirations of this watch. We have lots more details on the HM8 Mark II, now live on Worn & Wound, along with all the rest of these watches. If you're not in the market for $78,000, I might have something a little more palatable for you, and that is another new release from Seiko. It is well, it's an anniversary piece. It's a Seiko 5 55th anniversary watch. This is based on an original design from 1968. This uses the old school Seiko 5 logo. This is the reference SRPK17. Starts just over $1,000. This is 39.5 millimeters. It's got a cushion case and a flat link bracelet. Overall, really sharp execution here. It even has a throwback box that comes with it. This is one of my favorite releases from Seiko in the non-dive watch collections that I've seen in quite some time. So hats off to them, and happy anniversary, happy 55th anniversary to Seiko 5. We've all had Seiko 5s come in and out of our collection at some point, right? Let us know any Seiko 5s that you've had come through your collection. Let us know your favorite one. And we'd love to hear your thoughts on the Seiko 5 55th anniversary model released this week. Is this a win for you? I love that old school logo. I'd love to see him use it more often. But overall, this is just a super handsome watch, and I love to see it coming back in this form at such a great price point, of course. All right, that is episode 54 of A Week in Watches. I mentioned I was going to call out our favorite comment from last week's episode, and that belongs to Aaron's Watches, who thanks us for mentioning the regatta timing features of the cedar rail of Tissot. These are practical things. We've got to put them to use for this kind of thing. So if any of you are regatta timing like Aaron's Watches, let us know. We'd love to hear it. Thank you for leaving that comment. We appreciate it. And we appreciate regatta timers around here. Okay, I'm just going to say it. I don't have a yacht, but I like that kind of stuff. Be sure to tune in next week. Leave your comments down below for a chance to get shouted out in episode 55. And once again, don't forget to check out the Wind Up Watch Shop for all your watch and watch accessory needs. Thank you for tuning into this episode. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and share. Until next time, take care.